Hi, we're presenting on impacts of climate change on Atlantic cyclonic storms. This presentation was done by Henry, Princess, and Tofumi. We're going to start with a brief overview of cyclonic storms. There are many types of cyclonic storms, but the most important type for us are tropical cyclones. Tropical cyclones go by many names, but in general, they're called hurricanes in the Atlantic, typhoons in the Pacific, and cyclones in the Indian Ocean. However, all of these describe the same type of storm. Tropical cyclones are rotating spiral storm systems that produce strong winds, thunderstorms, and heavy rain. The storm surge is a rise in sea level from water being pushed by the winds. When combined with high tide, it can reach as high as 6 meters, and is usually the most deadly element of a tropical cyclone. At the center of the storm is a low pressure area of falling air, which often creates an eye where air sinks low enough to stop cloud formation. The edge of the eye is where the highest wind speeds are found and the greatest damage occurs. The movement of tropical cyclones is controlled mainly by local prevailing winds and other weather conditions. It is also affected by beta drift, where storms drift poleward and westward because of the Coriolis effect. It's important to understand how cyclonic storms form to predict how climate change might affect them. Tropical cyclones are fueled by evaporating ocean water. So as this warm, moist air rises, it creates a low pressure zone. And as surrounding air moves towards the low pressure zone, it begins to rotate due to the Coriolis effect. The reason they rotate so rapidly is because of the conservation of angular momentum. So as air flows towards the center of the storm, angular velocity increases. Factors that influence tropical cyclone formation include the temperature of surface water, wind shear, and atmospheric instability. Rapid intensification is a phenomenon where a tropical cyclone in favorable conditions intensifies dramatically within a short period of time. The tropical cyclone starts to dissipate when it makes landfall because it draws in dry continental air. Factors that can accelerate dissipation are passing over cooler water, such as lakes, or islands and mountainous terrain that disrupt the storm structure.
The current effects of climate change on Atlantic cyclonic storms. Climate change is driving significant changes in the frequency, intensity, and duration of these storms, which have devastating impacts on coastal communities and poor communities. Warmer ocean temperatures are supplying these storms with more energy to form and intensify them, leading to an increase in the frequency of these storms. There's also evidence that indicates that Atlantic cyclonic storms are now lasting longer than they used to, which can lead to more devastation in affected areas. Further, as sea levels rise and continue to due to climate change, storm surges associated with Atlantic cyclonic storms are becoming more severe. Storm surges occur when a cyclonic storm pushes a large amount of water towards the coast, causing flooding and damage. With higher sea levels, the storm surges can reach further inland and cause more damage. Future effects of climate change on Atlantic cyclonic storms. Looking forward, climate models predict that the effects of climate change on Atlantic cyclonic storms will only become worse. As the atmosphere becomes warmer, it can hold more moisture, meaning that Atlantic cyclonic storms in the future may produce more rainfall than they currently do. This could lead to more flooding and damage. With sea levels projected to rise in the future, storm surges associated with Atlantic cyclonic storms will become more severe, increasing the risk of flooding and damage in coastal areas. Further, climate change may alter the path that these storms take, potentially causing more storms to hit more populated areas or areas that are not even prepared for cyclonic storms. This is a data report on Atlantic cyclone activity. This figure shows that the accumulated cyclone energy index values, which include data on cyclone strength, duration, and frequency from 1950 to 2020. By looking at the graph, you can tell that the values are overall higher as it approaches the 21st century compared to the earlier years, which correlates the increase in the emission of greenhouse gases. These effects of climate change on Atlantic cyclonic storms highlight the need for continued efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Overall, it is clear that climate change is having and will continue to have significant impacts on Atlantic cyclonic storms.
Moving onward from what Tufumi said, as oceans get heated due to climate change, more heat energy is available, making it more likely for Atlantic cyclonic storms to develop. If we as humans continue to increase planet warming greenhouse gases, not only will the interactivities of these storms increase, but their intensity will increase as well. This could lead to environmental threatening factors such as landslides, heavy rainfalls leading to floods, erosion, tornadoes, destructive winds, and wildfires. All these aspects are a threat to our vegetation and ecosystem. The following image was taken just 6 weeks before the crucial 2022 Brazilian president election. It represents the Brazilian Amazon forest, which plays a key role in our ecosystem being burnt down due to wildfires. About 3,358 fires were detected during this incident. One of the ways in which we can decrease the amount of CO2 in our atmosphere is by maintaining forestry as well as planting trees. But if wildfires are taking down important vegetation such as the Brazilian rainforest, the race to reduce climate change will only become more hideous and tougher. Additionally, the threat that increased cyclonic storm poses to our environment doesn't only affect our vegetation, but it puts biodiversity at risk. Aspects such as wildfires, erosion, and landslide lead to forestry destruction, which overall damages habitat as well as food resources for wildlife animals. This leads to more detailed deaths amongst organisms, risking animal diversity by making certain animals more prone to extinction due to habitat loss. Such factors are a leading cause to animal extinction, which overall is a threat to our biodiversity as well as our ecosystem balance. The following image represents the living status of aquatic organisms following the passage of a cyclonic storms. Low dissolved oxygen is by far the most common cause of post-hurricanes fish kills. When oxygen levels get too low, fish are unable to obtain the required amount of oxygen necessary for metabolism. Most oftentimes, when this happens, there are a risk of death. This poses a major threat to the balance of our ecosystem and marine extinction as a whole. Again, this highlights some of the risks increased cyclonic storms bring to our environment as well as our ecosystem biodiversity. Moving onward, Atlantic cyclonic storms do not only affect our biodiversity but humanity as a whole. It affects humans physically, socially, and economically. For example, storms are known to bring about disasters such as transportation disruption, damage of properties, destroying agriculture, and even leading to death. All this aspect leads to extreme destruction, which brings along a significant loss in not just economic status of a society, but the social life and the daily activities of that society as a whole. In fact, according to Seven, a standard deviation increase in tropical cyclone damage is associated with a decrease of 262 percent points of the annual sectoral growth rate. This corresponds to a mean annual global loss of 16.7 billion USD. This value shows just how much hurricanes as well as tornadoes can disrupt our environment or our living studies. And this can cause the country to go in debt as well as struggle to bring back the society to its normal norms as well as activities. Similarly, death rates that results from weather disaster are an alarming issue to our society, which can are alarming issues to our society. These can cause families to go through psychological stress and even be filled with emotions that they might struggle to overcome. And again, adding more stress on the society in terms of health and causing the society to spend more income. In fact, a recent tornado incident occurred in the southern and Midwest region of the United States. According to Maya Yang, at least 32 people were killed due to this incident. This again highlights how dangerous and life-threatening weather disasters can be. And the fact that this type of incident might just continue to increase if actions are not taken to fight global change. Makes global change an alarming factor that needs to be fought for before it becomes too difficult to go after it. This image represents some of the damages that the cyclonic storm caused in the Midwest and the southern regions of the United States a few weeks ago.
In summary, Atlantic cyclonic storms are a type of intense weather system that develop over the Atlantic Ocean. Climate change has had and will have significant effects on these weather systems in the Atlantic. As the Earth becomes more heated due to greenhouse gas emissions, warmer sea surface temperatures energize and intensify these cyclonic storms. In short, climate change is an issue that needs to be urgently addressed. The effects of climate change on Atlantic cyclonic storms are detrimental and include the destruction of surroundings and the death of people. Here are our sources. And thank you for watching our presentation.